Oh, hey, whoa.
You didn't learn?
You want another black eye? I got some work to do.
The movie begins in an underground fight club, where Carter Ford is dominating his opponent in the ring. Meanwhile, Frankie, the owner of a local tavern, watches closely. After Carter secures victory, another fighter, Dalton, steps forward. Carter immediately recognizes him and chooses not to engage, allowing Dalton to collect his earnings without having to fight. However, outside the venue, an enraged spectator, furious over losing $500 on the match, attempts to stab Dalton. But after realizing that his attack has little effect on Dalton, the man flees. As Dalton tends to his wound, Frankie approaches and informs him about a bar she manages called the Roadhouse, located in the small Florida town of Glass Key. She offers him a job as a bouncer. Though hesitant at first, Dalton ultimately agrees, as he finds himself with few alternatives in his current situation. Upon arriving in Glass Key, Dalton crosses paths with Charlie, a teenage bookstore owner, and her father, Stephen. They kindly offer him a free book and then guide him to the Roadhouse. Before beginning his new role, Dalton takes time to get to know his new colleagues, Billy and Laura. That evening, he observes Billy and the rest of the male staff managing disruptive patrons. Shortly thereafter, a motorcycle gang, led by a man named Dell, storms into the bar, intimidating the employees and customers alike. Dalton attempts to defuse the situation peacefully, but his efforts only provoke Dell further. Realizing that words will not be enough, Dalton steps outside and subtly lures the gang out by approaching their bikes. As the bikers follow, he takes them on one by one. Dell and his gang put up resistance, but Dalton remains composed, skillfully incapacitating them. He then personally escorts them to the hospital. However, upon arrival, he is scolded by a doctor named Ellie for bringing in the gang members ahead of other injured patients. Nevertheless, his charm softens her stance, and she eventually tends to his own wounds. Later, Dalton rests on a boat floating on a lake while Frankie warns him of a nearby crocodile. As he sleeps, he dreams about the final match of his career as a UFC fighter. Meanwhile, Dell and his gang report back to their boss, Mafia leader Ben Brandt, detailing their run-in with Dalton. Concerned that Dalton may disrupt his operations, Brandt orders them to eliminate him at any cost. Dalton gradually realizes that the townspeople are familiar with his reputation, and thugs hesitate to engage with him upon recognizing who he is. He takes it upon himself to train Billy and the rest of the staff on how to properly handle aggressive customers. Demonstrating his skills, he quickly identifies a man carrying a concealed weapon, disarms him effortlessly, and removes him from the premises. Following a long and taxing night at work, Dalton begins his journey home, only to be ambushed by Dell and his gang, who attempt to run him over using Dell's girlfriend's truck. They succeed in knocking Dalton off a bridge, but he miraculously survives the fall. Upon reaching his destination, he encounters Dell waiting for him, armed with a gun. The two face off once again, and Dalton overpowers Dell, sending him plunging into the water, where a crocodile swiftly claims him. Over time, Dalton starts uncovering the illegal dealings taking place in Glass Key. One evening, as he leaves the bookstore, he is confronted by a group of Brandt's henchmen, but he quickly incapacitates one of them, making it clear that he is not to be underestimated. Gerald, who, upon hearing of Dalton's presence in Glass Key, orders his most brutal enforcer, Knox, to take care of him. Knox, notorious for his reckless actions in Italy, where he ran through the streets naked, assaulted a man for his jacket, and set a business on fire, arrives in Glass Key. Upon meeting with Brandt, Knox informs him that he is working for Gerald, which unsettles Brandt and his associates. Meanwhile, Dalton spends time with Ellie, who takes him out on her ex-boyfriend's boat. During their time together, Ellie reveals that she knows about his hidden past, which he has been trying to keep secret. Though he initially plans to leave town, Ellie convinces him to stay, and their evening ends with a kiss. Shortly after, Dalton is confronted by Sheriff Big Dick and his corrupt police force, who demand that he leave town. When he refuses, they resort to violence, and Dick nearly executes him before Ellie intervenes. She slaps her father and rescues Dalton, later revealing that her father is working in collusion with Brant. She urges Dalton to flee town for his own safety. That night, at the Roadhouse, Brant taunts Dalton, bringing up his past in the UFC and exposing the real reason he quit. During one of his matches, he unintentionally killed an opponent. Although the fight had been officially stopped, Dalton has been haunted by the incident ever since. After Brant leaves, Knox storms into the Roadhouse and begins attacking Billy and other customers. Dalton steps in to stop him, leading to a fierce battle. Despite Knox's formidable strength, Dalton refuses to surrender, even after taking a severe beating. Ellie arrives just in time to provide medical aid and support. As Dalton prepares to leave town, he discovers that the bookstore has been set on fire by Brant's thugs, Sam and Vince. Charlie and Steven are taken to the hospital but survive. Dalton hunts down Vince, who threatens him with a gun, but Dalton swiftly strikes his throat, crushing his trachea. Meanwhile, Sheriff Dick tracks Dalton down and warns him that Brant has kidnapped Ellie. Dalton heads to Brant's yacht, where he encounters Dick, realizing he has been lured into a trap. However, Brant then appears, confirming that Ellie is indeed his hostage. Before Brant's men can overwhelm him, Dalton sets fire to a nearby boat, causing mass confusion. The yacht begins to sink as he fights off Brant's thugs and rushes to rescue Ellie. Knox arrives on a skiff, intent on finishing Dalton off, while Brant speeds away with Ellie on a motorboat. Dalton manages to board the boat, where he and Brant engage in a fierce struggle. Their fight results in a crash near the Roadhouse, with Brant being thrown onto its roof. Meanwhile, Knox resurfaces, hijacks a vehicle, and drives it straight into the Roadhouse. When Brant orders Knox to kill Dalton, Knox instead betrays him, snapping Brant's neck. Dalton and Knox face off once more in an intense battle. Although Knox proves to be a powerful adversary, Dalton ultimately overcomes him by stabbing him with wooden shards,